December 16th, 1989. Mountain Brook, Alabama. A federal judge comes home from work, tired after a long day in court. On his kitchen table sits a package, unexpected, but not unusual for someone in his position. He opens it, and in that moment, his life ends. But this wasn't random violence. This was a calculated assassination that would rock the federal judiciary and launch one of the largest FBI investigations of its time. Welcome to 50 States of Justice. I'm Bill, and I'm here to take you on an incredible journey across America. Over the coming months, we'll be exploring 10 solved criminal cases from each of the 50 United States. That's 500 stories where justice prevailed, investigations succeeded, and families finally got the closure they deserved. You might be wondering why focus on solved cases. Well, while many true crime channels leave you hanging with unsolved mysteries, I believe there's something powerful about stories where good triumphs over evil, where dedicated investigators crack the case, and where the system actually works. These aren't just crime stories. They're stories of hope, perseverance, and the relentless pursuit of justice. From small towns to major cities, from decades-old cold cases that were finally solved to recent crimes where modern forensics made all the difference. We're covering it all. And here's what makes this special. We're organizing everything by state, so you'll get to see the unique criminal history of your home state and discover fascinating cases from places you've never been. Our first stop, Alabama, and a case that targeted the very heart of our judicial system. Judge Robert Smith Vance was 58 years old in 1989, a Birmingham native. He'd been serving as a federal judge for the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Alabama since 1977. He was known as a fair but firm jurist, someone who took his role seriously and wasn't afraid to make tough decisions. But on that December evening, Judge Vance became the target of something unprecedented in modern American history. A domestic terrorist attack specifically designed to kill a federal judge. Let's set the scene. December 16, 1989. Mountain Brook is an affluent suburb of Birmingham, Alabama. Judge Vance lived there with his wife, Helen, in a comfortable home that reflected his standing in the community. That Saturday evening, the judge noticed a package on his kitchen table. It appeared to be a standard manila envelope, roughly the size of a large book. Nothing about it screamed danger. No strange markings, no unusual weight. Just another piece of mail that had arrived while he was out. At approximately 7:15 p.m., Judge Vance opened the package. The explosion was immediate and devastating. The bomb, later determined to contain about 4 ounces of a pipe bomb mechanism, killed the judge instantly. The blast was so powerful, it shattered windows throughout the house and could be heard several blocks away. Helen Vance, who was in another part of the house at the time, was injured by flying debris, but survived. Neighbors rushed to help, and emergency responders arrived within minutes. But there was nothing anyone could do for Judge Vance. But this wasn't an isolated incident. What made this case even more chilling was what investigators would discover in the coming days. This was part of a larger campaign of terror. Within hours, the FBI was on scene. The murder of a federal judge is automatically a federal crime, and this kind of attack on the judiciary demanded immediate and comprehensive response. The Birmingham FBI office was joined by the Bureau's elite bomb specialists and behavioral analysts. But before they could even begin processing the Vance crime scene thoroughly, another bomb exploded. This time, it was in Georgia. Robert Robinson, a civil rights attorney in Savannah, was killed by a similar mail bomb on December 16th, the same day as Judge Vance's murder. The timing couldn't be coincidental. Then came the third bomb. This one didn't kill anyone, but it provided investigators with their first major break. On December 18th, a package exploded at the Jacksonville, Florida office of the NAACP, injuring 2 people. This bomb was less sophisticated, suggesting either the bomber was in a hurry or making mistakes under pressure. The FBI now knew they were dealing with a serial bomber, someone with access to bomb-making materials and the knowledge to create deadly devices. But more importantly, the pattern was becoming clear. The targets seemed to be connected to civil rights or judicial issues. The breakthrough came from the forensic analysis. All 3 bombs shared similar construction techniques, components, and a distinctive signature in their construction. The bomber was using the same source for materials and following a consistent methodology. The investigation took a crucial turn when investigators began examining the packages themselves. Each bomb had been sent through the U.S. mail, which meant there were postal records, potential fingerprints, and most importantly, postmarks that could be traced. The forensic team made several key discoveries. First, the bombs were sophisticated, but not military grade. This suggested someone with knowledge of explosives, but not necessarily professional training. Second, the components were commercially available, but required specific knowledge to assemble effectively. But the real breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Walter Leroy Moody Jr., a 57-year-old resident of Rex, Georgia, had come to the FBI's attention for a very specific reason. He had been convicted of possessing a bomb in 1972, almost 2 decades earlier. That 1972 case was remarkably similar to the current bombings. Moody had been caught with a mail bomb that failed to explode properly. He served time in prison, and after his release, he had nursed a deep grudge against the federal judicial system that had convicted him. When FBI agents looked deeper into Moody's background, they discovered a man consumed with hatred for the courts, civil rights lawyers, and federal judges. He had filed numerous lawsuits over the years, almost all of them dismissed. He blamed the system for his problems and had spent years plotting revenge. The evidence against Moody began mounting quickly. His fingerprints were found on one of the packages. Witnesses placed him near post offices where the bombs were mailed. Most damning of all, investigators found bomb-making materials and partially constructed devices in his home. On July 13, 1990, nearly 7 months after the bombings, Walter Leroy Moody Jr. was arrested at his Georgia home. The FBI had built an airtight case against him, but Moody wasn't going down without a fight. At his trial, Moody represented himself, displaying the same arrogance and contempt for the legal system that had driven him to murder. He denied all charges and attempted to present elaborate conspiracy theories about why he was being framed. But the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution presented forensic evidence linking Moody to all 3 bombs. They showed the jury his history of violence, and his pattern of filing frivolous lawsuits against the federal government. Most importantly, they demonstrated his specific grudge against Judge Vance. It turned out that Moody blamed Judge Vance for his conviction in the 1972 bomb case. Even though Vance hadn't been the judge in that trial, Moody's hatred had become so consuming that facts no longer mattered in his mind. All federal judges were responsible for his problems. The trial lasted several weeks, but the verdict was never in doubt. On June 28, 1991, Walter Leroy Moody Jr. was convicted on all counts, including the murder of Federal Judge Robert Vance. He was sentenced to 7 life sentences plus 400 years in prison. But that wasn't the end of his story. Alabama had other plans for Walter Moody. While Moody was serving his federal sentence, Alabama authorities were building their own case. They charged him with capital murder under state law for the death of Judge Vance. In 1996, Moody was tried again, this time in Alabama State Court. Once again, he was convicted, but this time, the sentence was death. Alabama's death penalty statute applied because Moody had killed a public official in the course of performing his duties. Walter Leroy Moody Jr. was executed by lethal injection on April 19, 2018. At the age of 83, he had spent nearly 3 decades on death row, longer than most, but justice was finally served. The case had lasting impacts beyond just Moody's punishment. Security for federal judges was significantly increased nationwide. The FBI developed new protocols for investigating attacks on the judiciary, and most importantly, the legal community rallied to show that terrorism against the courts would never be tolerated. Judge Vance's legacy lived on through the Robert S. Vance Jr. Federal Building in Birmingham, which houses the federal courthouse where he once served. His commitment to justice and the rule of law became a symbol of judicial integrity that Moody's violence could never destroy. The assassination of Federal Judge Robert Vance shocked the nation because it represented an attack on the very foundation of our legal system. When someone targets a judge for doing their job, they're not just committing murder. They're attacking the principle that justice should be blind and impartial. Walter Leroy Moody thought he could terrorize the federal judiciary into submission. Instead, he galvanized the legal community and law enforcement to stand together against domestic terrorism. His campaign of violence ended not with his victory, but with his death. Justice served after nearly 3 decades. This case reminds us that our justice system, while imperfect, has the strength and resilience to protect itself and hold even the most dangerous criminals accountable. Judge Vance died doing what he believed, in serving justice, and in the end, justice served him. And that's our first case from Alabama, but we're just getting started. Next time, we'll journey to a completely different state for another incredible solved case. We're going to explore all 50 states before we circle back to Alabama, so you'll get to see the unique criminal history from every corner of America. Maybe you're from Alabama and want to see what other cases we'll eventually cover from your state. Or maybe you're curious about what shocking crimes were solved in your home state. Whatever it is, we've got you covered. Don't miss out on any of these incredible stories of justice served. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss an episode.